Hey everybody, what's going on? Hexlex here. I got another Master Duel video for you all, and I am bringing you probably one of the most me decks I've ever played. It's 60 cards, we're playing Grass, it's a pile deck, we've got multiple archetypes, including Punk and Assault Synchron, so you know we're in for a good time. So this is going to be, I don't really know what to call it. I kind of am just calling it the everything pile. If you look on Master Duel meta, it's listed under Ishizu Chaos, which is kind of an archetype from before Tearlaments even dropped when we just had the Ishizu cards. Remember the Necroface mill decks? That was Ishizu Chaos on Master Duel meta. Now Ishizu Chaos looks more like this, even though we're actually not playing any Ishizu cards. So yeah, I'm just calling it the everything pile because we are playing just about everything turbo-y and cool in this meta. And by turbo-y and cool, I mostly mean Chaos Ruler plus Tearlaments. So there are a lot of people who probably won't think this deck is cool. I'm sure there are many people who would say, like, this deck is the epitome of what they don't like about Yu-Gi-Oh! But again, I completely disagree. This is the epitome of what I love about Yu-Gi-Oh! Blending archetypes, seeing how well they work together to seamlessly weave a very powerful inboard through a very long convoluted combo. Oh, yes, and please. So, this build in particular, oh no, we are playing the Ishizus. I totally just overlooked them. So we are actually playing the Ishizus. This could technically still be Ishizu Chaos, but again, I'm just kind of referring to it as the everything pile. Generally though, you can kind of break it down into a few main archetypes. Punks, Thunder Dragons, and Tearlaments are going to be the main ones represented here, as well as Bystials as well. And then as mentioned, we also have some Assault Synchrons for some extra extension as well. Generally speaking, you're typically going to most often start your turn by making either a Tearlament or Chaos Ruler play, and then you'll kind of go into the second half of your turn doing the other, like, kind of half of your deck. Basically, you know, I like to start off, for example, if I have, like, Reinoheart and E-Tele, I might start off by normal summoning Reinoheart, doing a Tearlaments line to bait out some interaction, and then, you know, once that has happened, or once the Tearlament effect's resolved, then go, okay, now I'll E-Tele for Amin and start doing that line. Your greatest enemy in this deck, I will tell you, is not any one deck in particular, it's actually the timer. I have never played a deck where I've so consistently been running out of time, and it's not even for not knowing what to do. Like, if you've played these individual decks, if you've played Punk decks, Thunder Dragon decks, and Tearlament decks, like, if you've played these decks, you'll generally see the combo lines, because there's not really anything new we're doing, we're just kind of blending existing lines together. It's just like, do I actually have the time to execute all of them? I have not actually run out of time yet, but one of the games we'll see coming up, I actually had literally had 0 seconds left on my clock when my opponent surrendered, so I'll make sure to point that out. I think that'll be the first game we watch, but we'll see. We are playing a single Diviner of the Herald. I would actually like to be playing more copies of this. Same with Snow. I only have 1 copy, but I would ideally like to be playing more. These 2 cards are actually pretty good to have at 2 in this deck, even though typically most decks like this would only play 1 of each. The Fairy Tale Snow in particular, banishing cards is often really good for this deck because we have the Thunder Dragon monsters that we want to banish, but at the same time, we have Bystials now to help us banish those more consistently. So in the past, I think a second Fairy Tale Snow would have been a lot more important pre-Bystial. Now, I think even if you already have a second copy, you can generally play only 1 and still be fine. I'm playing 1 because I only have 1. Same with the Diviner as well. Diviner, if I had a second, I would play a second. This card is very good in this deck, and being able to set up one of the Ishizu Millers right away is usually pretty good. Or even later in the turn, if you end up milling the Diviner, you can bring it back with Sprite Elf, and then either way, you end up setting up the Baron de Fleur. One of the things that is kind of unfortunate about this deck is the extra deck. Because we're playing so many different archetypes, the extra deck space is pretty tight. I will say that one thing I did consistently wish I had was another good Love Late Synchro to go into. So I might put in something like an Excel Stardust Synchro, Excel Synchro Stardust rather, or Draco Berserker of the Tenny. I could see either of those being correct to potentially play here, but ultimately we are trying to play the best balance in our extra deck, you know, given everything that we're trying to play in this everything pile. But, you know, you generally only need the 3 Tearlament monsters. You could play a Mud Dragon if you really wanted to, but you don't really need it because we don't even play rank 4s. We do play a rank 6 and a rank 8. We play Beatrice and the Zombie Vamp, respectively. Beatrice, you could, in theory, get away without playing. I haven't really... There's been situations where I could summon this but didn't need to, but there are times where it does come up. Zombie Vamp, I would definitely say, though, is necessary. It's really easy to go into this after making a Chaos Ruler, especially if you use the Punk engine to do so, and this is a 60-card deck where you want to be milling as often as possible. If you don't open grass, you want to be milling with Kitkallos, with Merrli, with Chaos Ruler, with Zombie Vamp. Just ideally, again, if you're not opening grass, or even if you are, you're activating all 4 of those effects to just keep sending cards from your deck to the graveyard. The more you're able to do that, the better games will go for you. One thing I will say about resolving grass in this deck, this doesn't just go for this deck, but this goes for any grass deck that's also playing Tearlaments. If you resolve a grass and you hit one of each fuser, you generally don't want to activate all 3 fuser effects. That's really not good because you'll often find yourself having to make fusions at times you don't want to, or use a Kitkallos before you even get a chance to search with it. In this deck in particular, literally the only things we can make with the Tearlaments are Kitkallos, Rulkallos, and Kaleidoheart. So you know, if you mill all 3 fusers off of grass, for example, I would really only resolve one of them. I would also try to resolve Havnis. I think that's the best one, especially if you have a Merrli still in your deck, because later in the turn, if you're Merrli, or if you need to get another fuser in the graveyard, you can potentially make a sprint to send a Merrli. So just be mindful in particular of when you're using Tearlaments Merrli. If it's sent with another fuser, use the other fuser effect, so that way you can, if you need to, later in the turn, send Merrli with sprint to get another fusion. There's a lot of little nuances to this deck, which is, again, part of the reason why you tend to run out of time so easily while playing with it. But, again, if you know each of these individual decks well enough, then you can play this whole pile without any additional experience really required to play it optimally. I do think the lines, again, assuming you know the lines, generally tend to play themselves out well enough. Alright, so let's go ahead and break this list down card by card. We have a lot of different cards and a lot of different archetypes, so I'll make sure to explain what each card is, and then we'll look at some gameplay. So we're playing 3 Maxx, 1 Diviner of the Herald, 2 Tearlaments Merrli, 3 Assault Synchron, 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, 3 Noh-P.U.N.K, Amin, 2 Tearlaments Havnis, 1 Fairy Tale Snow, 2 Tearlaments Shcieren, 3 Tearlaments Reinoheart, 1 Keldo the Sacred Protector, 1 Mudora the Sword Oracle, 2 Kelbek the Ancient Vanguard, 1 Agido the Ancient Sentinel, 3 Thunder Dragondark, 1 Noh-P.U.N.K Deer Note, 1 Thunder Dragonhawk, 2 Thunder Dragonroar, 1 Bystial Magnamhut, 3 Bystial Saronir, 1 Bystial Druiswarm, 2 Bystial Baldrake, 1 Noh-P.U.N.K Foxy 3 Bystial Lubellion, 1 Foolish Burial, 1 Gold Sarc, 3 Allure, 2 Grass, 1 Perlerieno, 1 Branded Regained, 2 Emergency Teleport, 2 Call by the Grave, and then 1 Branded Beast. Excuse me, that's going to make up our 60-card main deck. Now for the extra deck, we're on 1 Tearlaments Kitkallos, one of each of all these cards, Thunder Dragoncolossus, Tearlaments Rulkallos, Kaleidoheart, Chaos Ruler, the Chaotic Magical Dragon, Baron de Fleur, Sword Soul Supreme Sovereign Cheng Ying, Psychic End Punisher, Beatrice, Lady of the Eternal, Zombie Vampire, IP Masquerena, Sprite Elf, Sprite Sprend, Appaloosa Bow of the Goddess, and then finally Underworld Goddess of the Closed World. So there is our list. Now let's look at some games. Okay, our first opponent is going to be on Bystial Branded Despia. Let's see how this game played out here. Alright, looks like we're taking the first turn, opening a fairly good hand. I mean, we have access to Amin as well as a Tearlaments Shcieren, so hands looking, and we have Maxx and Call By. This is definitely looking like a great hand. I'm going to start by summoning the Amin, activating the effect. Opponent is going to try to Ash Blossom it, but I'm going to use the Call by the Grave to go ahead and stop that. So Amin's going to grab our Ogre Dance. We only have 1 Ogre Dance. Very minimal punk package in this deck, just because, again, we're cramming so many different packages into one deck here. Ogre Dance, the Foxy Tune. Foxy Tune is going to activate, especially a Deer Note. Note that I discarded Baldrake and not Shcieren. The reason I did that, even though, you know, a Tier 1 monster might seem like it wants to be in their graveyard, is that even if I set the Shcieren now, I don't actually have a way to fuse for it. Plus, Shcieren can potentially be used as an extender later in the turn to mill even more cards. Now, I'm going to be grabbing my Foxy Tune back with the Deer Note, as I mentioned during the deck profile itself, because that's going to allow us to go into Zombie Vamp, which we'll do here in a moment. Going to grab Bystial Magnamhut. Saronir going to the graveyard means that Lubellion's going. I get to sack the Chaos Ruler to bring back the Lubellion. I'll use that to set up the Branded Regained, and then I'll go into Zombie Vamp. Alright, Zombie Vampire is going to activate, milling both players the top 4 cards of their decks, and then summoning one of the monsters. I'll grab Thunder Dragonroar here. One thing I will say about Zombie Vamp is that it's a lot better in this meta than it has been in the past. You know, in previous Punk decks where I was making Chaos Ruler, I would often bring back the Amin and go straight for the Psychic End Punisher. That was in Tier 0 meta, where milling the opponent was generally pretty much always a bad idea. In this meta, you can get away with it a lot more easily, so Zombie Vamp, I think, is definitely better now that Tearlaments aren't so dominant that you can expect to face them most of the time. I'm gonna bring back my Chaos Ruler. I'll banish my Thunder Dragonhawk, and then I'll set up the Chain Link to draw with Branded Regained first, because I actually want to keep all the cards in my hand, but if I draw something I want to put back, I'll just do that with the Hawk. End up getting an Allure instead of that Agido. I will make use of this Allure. I was planning on banishing, well, it would just depend on what I draw, but planning on banishing the Shcieren, but I'll definitely banish the Thunder Dragondark here instead. Now, unfortunately, I don't get to set up the Thunder Dragon Colossus with this hand because I've already used pretty much all my Thunder Dragon effects. I think I might have been able to set that up in a different order where I actually could have summoned the Colossus, but I would need to activate one of the in-hand effects of one of the Thunder Dragon monsters, and I've already used the other effects of Dark and Hawk this turn, so yeah, I'll just go ahead and use Roar's effect to bring out another Thunder Dragondark. Kitkallos now drops the Merrli. You can see why turns in this deck take so long. We're just pivoting back and forth between two very different playstyles, the Tearlaments and then the kind of generic Synchro pile as well. Speaking of Tearlaments, going to fire off this Havnis as well as the Kelbek here. Again, my goal is to just, your goal in general when playing this kind of a pile deck is just like, keep milling, just make the next play another mill, and if you can just keep milling and keep putting bodies on the board, then you will eventually end on something good, is the idea. So we did end up milling an Assault Synchron, not just one but two in the midst of that, so not only can I bring one back to sync for the Baron, but then I can also bring one back with the, bring the Chaos Roar back with the other Assault Synchron. That is one thing you need to note about Assault Synchron and Chaos Ruler, is that the Assault Synchron has to already be in the graveyard at the time that Chaos Ruler is banished. So if you try to sync Assault Synchron with Chaos Ruler and the Chaos Ruler gets banished, but you don't have a different Assault Synchron in graveyard, you won't get the Ruler back. Going for an Appaloosa with 3 materials here. Gonna set up a Magnamhut to grab a Baldrake from the graveyard, and then pass over to the opponent. So yeah, as you can see, ending on a very solid end board here. We have 3 material Appaloosa, so we get 3 monster negates. We have any kind of a summon negate with Rulkallos. We have an Amin negate with the Baron. The Magnamhut provides the Baldrake for more disruption in 2 different ways. And then we have the Elf as well to potentially bring back something like IP Masquerade if we need to. So, and then yeah, our opponent's just going to go ahead and concede in the wake of that, because what else are you going to do, you know? So that's a great example of what a turn 1 with this deck can potentially look like. It can be even more crazy than that, but this was just a solid example of a turn 1 with this deck. So let's go ahead and take a look at our next duel here. Alright, this time we're up against a pure Thunder Dragon deck. Well, it's playing Bystial, so you could call it Bystial Thunder Dragon if you want to, but I have a hard time imagining a pure Thunder Dragon deck that does not play any Bystials, so... I'm going to be taking the first turn yet again here. This is a great example of a hand where I'm going to open with Reinoheart, and I'll just start by normal summoning it. Because really, if you start by normal summoning Reinoheart, there's a lot of people... Because here's the thing, a lot of people don't even check how many cards are in their opponent's deck, right? Which is something I like to look at the beginning of every duel, if it doesn't, you know, seem inherently obvious. But, like... there's a lot of people who, like, when you just normal summon Reinoheart and start doing Tearlaments stuff, they'll just, like, throw out all their disruption against that, like, everything they have, and then you can be like, cool, activate Foxy Tune. Or, like, well, to be fair, activate Foxy Tune doesn't always do anything, or doesn't always make plays by itself, so, you know, maybe activate E-Telly for Amin, you know, just having that follow-up play when your opponent thinks you're only on one engine to go into a completely different engine is such a valuable tool to have. In this case, we're going for a Tearlament line ending on Rulkallos plus the Sprite Elf. Gonna use Sprite Elf to bring back Assault Synchron, then summon this Bystial Magnamhut. This is exactly what I was talking about before during the profile. We started with as much of a Tearlament line as we could. Now we're gonna pivot into a Chaos Ruler line. The cool thing is, too, because we had Magnamhut specifically, we also get to grab the extra Bystial monster during the end phase there. So here I'm going to add the Thunder Dragonhawk. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like I've set up any of my other Thunder Dragons in the graveyard, so I don't know if I'll be able to actually summon a Colossus here, but we have the potential to at the very least. Alright, so we're going to send the Deer Note and the Chaos Ruler for the Amin, or for the IP Masquerade. That's right, because I actually had to special it with the Foxy tune there. Specialing that so that way we can get back the Amin here. Because I started in a weird spot with my Punk engine, as I stated before. So that's why we're using the Foxy tune in the way that we are. Alright, now Bystial Lubellion, after setting up Branded Regained, is going to get overlaid with the Chaos Ruler for a Zombie Vamp. Again, we're just milling. We're milling and milling and milling and milling and milling as much as possible. Here I ended up with a kind of awkward hodgepodge of monsters, but that's okay. I can just use them to make a 4-material Appaloosa. That's the other nice thing about this deck is that, and why Appaloosa is actually very important to have in this extra deck in particular, is because there's a lot of board states like that where you'll just end with a bunch of like random monsters, and it's like, alright, well at least I get a bunch of monster negates out of them, so... Alright, here my opponent is going to start by activating the Thunder Dragon Fusion effect. Since I have the first opportunity to have priority passed back to me and make a play, I'm going to use it to get Sprite Elf and make a Merrli. To be fair, I probably could have waited till later in the turn to do that when I had a little bit more information, but I figured I'd also just go ahead and do it now and just see what all information I had available. The thing I'm thinking about in particular is that if I'd actually milled a Fuser, I would have liked to have summoned Kaleidoheart here, so... that would have been nice to have been able to summon that. So I'm going to negate the Lubellion with the Appaloosa. Normally I don't go out of my way to negate Lubellion because it's often like negation bait, but here I have 4 monster negates, so it's like, why not? There's no reason not to use one of them. So it's going to drop a Chaos Creator that will allow me to summon out this Magnamhut and draw a card, and also get a Magnamhut search during the end phase here. Alright, looks like the opponent's going to fish for some more draws with this Chaos Space, probably looking for outs here. Aloof Lupine's activating. I'm just, again, going to go ahead and Appaloosa it. Normally, I wouldn't go out of my way to negate an Aloof Lupine, but here I have the extra material, so I'll go for it. Alright, so opponent is going to move to battle phase. I was prepared to lose my Appaloosa to battle here, but they actually decided to battle over the Sprite Elf instead, which I do think was ultimately a misplay. If both monsters had gone into battle with the Appaloosa, then I would be out of monster negates, and I wouldn't be able to stop, well, you know, pretty much anything my opponent has moving forward. They're going to try to use the Chaos Creator. I'll negate that. Thunder Dragon Fusion is going to get hit by the Tearlaments Rulkallos. Still have a monster negate, but I don't have the room anymore to summon this Bystial Baldrake if I need to, so that's a little scary. But if my opponent's just going to summon a Bystial Saronir, that's fine. I'll let that happen, because I'd rather have the Rulkallos and my opponent have a Saronir than me have a Baldrake and my opponent not have a Saronir, if that makes sense. So, alright, Saronir is going to send Branded Regained. Bystial Lubellion, I assume, is going to try to set up a Branded Beast, but I'll use my last monster negation to stop that. Opponent's only got 1 card left in hand at this point, so... oh, this was the game! This was the game where my opponent had 0 seconds left. Or where I had 0 seconds left, rather. It was at this point, when I activated Keldo and put back the IP Masquerade, I had 0 seconds left on my clock, so I just had to hold the toggle to off to make sure priority didn't get past to me, because if priority got past to me for even a split moment, I would have lost the duel. Thankfully, it was like right at the end of all of my disruption. My opponent technically had 1 card left, so I was a little bit anxious about that. But thankfully, my opponent just conceded. They didn't have any more responses, which again was a relief for me as I was very much out of time at this point. We do still have a couple more games to watch, so let's go straight to the next one here. So for this one, we're going to be up against Ancient Warrior. Definitely interesting suite of decks that we end up playing against here at Master Rank. Well, was it even Master 5? It was actually at Master 4 I played all these games, so... To be fair, though, it's still towards the end of the season, so I think a lot of people, like myself, honestly, are like, you know, we're in Master Rank, I think we're good from here. Alright, gonna mill a Shcieren with a Shcieren, or discard a Shcieren with a Shcieren, and then mill 3. I was totally prepared to just fuse the 2 Shcirens to make my Kitkallos, but my Shcieren mills were insane. I hit another Tearlaments monster, a Reinoheart, as well as a Kelbek, so... we managed to go ahead and secure that. At this point, I'm looking at my opponent's mills, and I just assumed they were on Zodiacs. But to be fair, Ancient Warriors is also a dedicated going second deck that makes use of Fire Formation Tenki. So there is that as well. Alright, at this point I'm going to use the Foxy tune to grab a Amin out of the deck, and then search for a Deer Note. Now, even though I already used my one Foxy tune, I can still tribute summon the Deer Note and then sync for Chaos Roar that way, and that is actually exactly what I'm going to do here. Alright, Deer Note is bringing back Foxy Tune, again, so we can go for Zombie Vamp later. Chaos Ruler is going to excavate the top 5. I think Snow is the only light or dark I hit here, so I'm just not going to add anything. I'll just send the Snow to the graveyard. That is actually something I've noticed a lot of people do that I don't know if maybe people don't know about with Chaos Ruler. Sometimes I'll see people have a mill or an excavate like that with Chaos Ruler where, like, the only light or dark is Snow, and they add it to hand, but then don't ever make use of it, and it's like, you know, you could just click no and send it to the graveyard, right? Like, that is definitely something you can and should be doing in situations like that, so. Alright, gonna bring back the Chaos Ruler, and I actually managed to banish a Thunder Dragondark in the process of doing so, so I get to use this Thunder Dragonhawk to basically make a Colossus here in a bit. Alright, Assault Synchron is bringing back the Chaos Ruler. Here I think I just end up making, yeah, the Appaloosa, because, like, IP and Baldrake wouldn't be bad to have during the opponent's turn, but I do value Appaloosa more. Monster negation as a whole tends to be better. Excuse me, better than, like, the very specific disruption that IP and Baldrake offer. So, again, another relatively solid board. We have 3 monster negates, a summon negate, and searching negate, and, yeah, as soon as my opponent goes to search for the 10-key, is when they realize that, oops, can't do that, and ultimately they just concede. So, love to see it. We do have one more game to see here as well, so let's go into that. And Heroes are going to be our final opponent for this game, or for this video, rather. This game, you know, playing against Heroes with a deck like this is actually very scary, especially when they get to go first like this, because, you know, it's super easy, like, super easy for a deck like my opponents to make Dark Law, and then I'm very much SOL for the most part at that point. So, opponent's going to start with a Prosperity for 3, revealing that they are in fact on Heroes, but also literally every hero player I've ever faced in this game also has the Skyscraper board. Not, of course, that I blame them, I just think that's funny. So, they're going to Ferris, pitching the Plasma. At this point, I can start summoning my Bystials, but what I'm really waiting for here is to see a Malicious in the graveyard, and or a Denier. I'll go ahead and banish. I'm waiting for those to banish. Plus, you know, nothing my opponent's activating or sending into graveyard so far necessarily needs to get banished out of the graveyard. They do banish for cost with Vion, so there was no getting around that. Looks like they're now linking their Vion and increase into the Wonder Driver. That's right, my opponent actually ended up, probably because priority kept getting passed over to me, my opponent actually ended up playing a line that played around my Bystials very well. They're using the Poly to set up an absolute 0. They're still holding on to that Mally in hand. Not using it because, again, I think at this point they suspect I have the Bystial. So at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and summon the Bystials. I also thought that maybe by banishing the Shadow Mist and Plasma out of my opponent's graveyard, I could force them to use Miracle Fusion for something they didn't really want to summon. I don't know the hero extra deck well enough off the top of my head, all the material requirements to know if I actually denied them anything useful, but I did force them to summon a Sunrise that isn't going to search for anything. The Wonder Driver will still allow them to reset up the Poly, which are going to use Poly to fuse Sunrise and Mally. Now they're going for DPE, now that I have played my Bystial monsters. No point in chaining Baldrake here. If I try to chain Baldrake, they just get to chain DPE's effect, which is why I didn't activate Baldrake there. So, still, you know, this board is not too bad. It's just a DPE and the absolute 0 to be mindful of. Just really one board wipe, really. Is all I really have to worry about. It's funny how Yu-Gi-Oh! Has been power crept, because DPE for a long while after it was released was considered just a good enough boss monster to summon, you know, and have like a good enough end board, usually by itself even. But now DPE plus absolute 0, I'm looking at this and I'm like, that board's not that big of a deal. We can play around that easy. So I just think about that sometimes, how far we've come in Yu-Gi-Oh! So. Fusing for Kitkallos, gonna activate Kitkallos' effects, grab myself a Merrli, activate Kitkallos yet again. Opponent's chaining DPE at this point. Looks like they're finally ready to pop the board, so that way I don't get to summon out this Merrli. Or no, I do still get to summon the Merrli here. We also get to mill 8 and feel great at the same time. This absolute 0 wiping the board will also allow me to set up a Bystial Lubellion in the graveyard with the Saronir here. And again, because we're the luckiest player in the world, we milled not just 1 but 2 millers off of those 8 off the top of the deck there. And we get to, not that our opponent has an Ash Blossom in hand to stop us, but we get to chain block it at the end with the Saronir effect, so. Gonna mill 10. I really like milling 10 against decks like Hero as well, because sometimes you can mill them like a very important combo piece. To be fair, we did also set up a Denier in their graveyard, but I'm also not particularly worried about what's set up in their graveyard or what isn't. Gonna summon Kaleidoheart, put back the DPE. At this point, all they have left is, well, the Stratos they just searched and the Wonder Driver, but we have the Thunder Dragonhawk in hand, so I get to make Colossus anyway, so I'm not concerned about this Stratos, like, even a little bit. And we also have Maxx for good measure, so although we did not end up on a huge game-ending end board, we still played through our opponent's board of Disruption well enough to end on Colossus plus Kaleidoheart, which is very, very good in my book. So I'm going to draw phase Maxx just in case my opponent happens to be playing triple attack. The Denier is going to activate. I'll go ahead and use Keldo to, well, deny it. We know one of their cards in hand is Stratos, which Colossus blanks, and it looks like their other card in hand ended up getting blanked as well, as they're going to concede at this point. So that will do it for this video. Thank you all for watching. Let us now move to the outro. Alright everybody, thank you so much for watching all the way to the very end of the video like this. That means a whole lot to me. Not just personally, but it's also a great way of supporting the channel as well. If you're interested in supporting the channel in other means, you can of course feel free to comment and or subscribe right here on YouTube. I'm always looking to the comments section. You guys leave some pretty awesome feedback as far as like constructive criticism goes when it comes to deck building, gameplay, channel content, all that stuff. So feel free to leave your opinion down there. I will be sure to take a look at that there. And then subscribing is going to be the best way to get notifications of when these videos drop. That does happen every day, by the way, so if you're looking for daily Master Duel content, you've come to the right place. And there are more places where you can get some daily Master Duel content. If you check out the description below, follow the top link over to my Patreon page. There for just $5 a month, which is as much as you pay for a booster pack. You'll find a lot more value than a pack full of filler over there. We've got some previews for content upcoming here on the channel. We've got some exclusive games that are only posted over on Patreon over there. We've got some Q&As, and then you can also have your name featured in this lovely credit sequence where I thank all of the people who are helping contribute over there on Patreon. It's a huge support to the channel, and it really means a lot as well. So thank you everyone who is donating that is featured here on screen. And again, you know, it's not just a pure donation. You do get some more daily Master Duel content over there just for being a part of the Patreon. But I think that's about all the time that I have for today's video. Once again, I just want to thank you so very much for sticking all the way to the end of the video. Again, it just means a lot, as I do put a decent amount of work into getting these videos out every single day. But that's about all the time that I've got for now. So without further ado, this is XLex. I'm signing out, and I hope you have a fantastic day.